Hello, hello. Okay, well, I know I'm talking to an empty room, but this is just to kind of test out the channel, and I don't know if it's a recording's going to be made or something, so I'll just keep talking. Yeah, I guess I'll just get into it. Basically, I'm here just to practice my GMAT study, doing it publicly to try and force myself to do it. And yeah, so I've got a question on the screen right now. I'm going to just try it, see what happens. All right, let's go. Should be easy. All right, let's put it this way. Number of teachers is T. Students equals 30T. Let's do this a different way. So, number of yeah, that's better. Oh, hey, we have a viewer. How's it going? I'm taking a long time with this, but right now I'm kind of in the knowledge building phase, so I'm not that worried about time yet. So divided by 30 equals T. And we've got S plus 5 divided by 25 equals T plus 5. think that makes sense. Now if I put those together, we got S equals 30t, and S also equals 25t plus 125 minus 5. So 30t equals 25t plus 125 minus 5. 5t equals 120. T equals 120 divided by 5, which is 24. So the number of teachers, so the present number of teachers should be 20. Wow. Did I do that right? 24, 12. Divided by 10 would be, I want to say D. No, I've obviously made a mistake there. I feel like this is supposed to be easy, but I've made a pretty simple mistake, obviously. So feel free to say something in the chat if you have any thoughts. Right, well, let's see. Okay, well, this person's apparently a Q47 and still stumbled, so that makes me feel slightly better. Let's scroll up a little bit. What is wrong with my approach? So 25 to 1 is the new ratio. 1 equals 1 times 15. So my initial equation was just wrong to begin with. I should have started with the ratio itself. S to t is 30 to 1, so 30x to x, that makes sense. And 30x to 50, 30x plus 50 over x plus 5 equals 25 over 1. Yeah, I mean, that's easy enough to solve for x. All right, I'm just going to try and do that maths do that algebra for myself to make sure I actually know how to do it. So if instead of starting with this equation, I mean, my logic there was basically saying, well, the number of teachers is equal to the number of students divided by 30, because there were 30 students for every teacher. That seemed to make sense, but I guess the other way to look at it would be S, so the number of students divided by the number of teachers equals 30 times some number versus that number, I think that's essentially the same logic, right? Anyway, so 30x over x, and then if we're saying 30x plus 50 over x plus 5 equals 25 over 1. Solving that, we should be able to say multiply both sides by x plus 5, and you get 30x plus 50 equals x plus 5, 25 over 1, well, which is essentially just 25 times that, which is 25x plus 125. That's looking very familiar. I feel like I had that same expression in my answer. Minus 25, 5x minus 50 equals 75. So something went wrong on mine, obviously, because I did not get that number. Then x equals 75 divided by 5. 75 divided by 5 is 15. And hence the solution. Right, okay. So that makes sense, actually. Now, what was wrong with mine? Because in mine, I had this part. I feel like I remember having that part. I had 25t plus 125, 25x plus 125, so I had that. Other side would have been 30x plus 50. I didn't have the 30. Well, I said s was 30t. So the mistake I made was, I think, working with 30t instead of 30t plus 50. I think that's what I did. Yeah, because s equals 30, I said s equals 30t, but that was the starting 30t. Oh, okay. Hi, Nico Heald. Want to become famous? Buy followers? No, I'm okay. Thanks for the tip there. Yeah, I'm just looking for a study group, so buying followers probably wouldn't really help me all that much. But yeah. But yeah, this was S at the start, but the number of students when I'm looking at it here is no longer 30t, it's now 30t plus 50. So I didn't add the 50 in, and that was what screwed me up. All right, that makes sense. I mean, good question. Should have been easier than I made it, and it shouldn't have taken me as long as it did. That's pretty cool. There's a solution there from, I remember Avi seeing a video from him with Manhattan Prep. If it's not, unless it's the different Avi, but I feel like that's the same guy. So clearly he's done some other stuff. All right. Well, U has been saved in the error log. I'll make a note. What did I do? Plugged in the wrong value for the number of students when working it out. In future, need to make sure I am consistent with which ratio I'm using in the equation. Yeah, I tried to kind of use values from one equation and plug it into another one, and then it didn't quite lead to anything that made sense. But hey, live and learn. Let's try another one. So I'm working on mixture questions at the moment because I'm trying to get a good understanding of kind of how to deal with these kinds of ratios, but also learned the allegation method, and I'm trying to kind of get some practice using that if I can, because it seems like a pretty cool method for dealing with these kinds of ratio questions especially. So 1 second, I'll start the clock. Let's go. All right, well, let's see. Can probably write LB. I think it's going to be too many letters. What's the formula for cost per pound? This is not really a ratio question, is it? Doesn't look like it to me. Okay, let's see. All right, well, it's going to be C. I'm going to say 8C plus 3D. No, not quite. So C is the number of pounds, and it's going to be $8 per pound. So yeah, $8 multiplied by C, $3 multiplied by D, and then there's a formula for cost per pound. All of that divided by C plus D, total number of pounds. $8C plus 3D divided by C plus D, C. All right, took me a little long, 23 seconds over 2 minutes, but at least I got this one right. It's nice for a change. So yeah, still not sure who's actually watching, but in case that one wasn't super obvious, what I did there was basically just kind of plug it all into an equation. So they gave us how many pounds of chocolate chips there were and how many pounds of dates there were, and they gave us a price per pound. And the question was basically how much per pound for the total weight. So really, it's kind of obvious if you just sort of think about it for a second. I guess staring at the question makes it seem harder than it is, but if you think about it for a second, you kind of go, well, okay, all you have to do is see how much the dates cost and how much the chocolate chips cost, add that together, and divide it by how heavy it all is. And that gives you your cost per pound. So yeah, really kind of obvious once you think about it like that. So it's just $8 multiplied by the number of pounds of chocolate chips, $3 multiplied by the number of pounds of dates, all of that divided by the total weight. So pounds of chocolate chips, pounds of dates. And that's what you have here. Let's go. It's a 2-to-1 ratio of mixture A to mixture B. Mixture. So 2-to-1 ratio, if it's 15 gallons, means A is going to be the 10 gallons. I don't know if a capital G is the symbol for gallons, actually. And B would be 5 gallons to make up the 15. So how many gallons of mixture A is in? How many gallons are in the mixture? I think it's going to be 10, so D. Nice. And that one's actually in a decent time too, 91 seconds. Under the 2 minutes. Although this one was very easy, or at least it seemed easy. Because, like I said, I learned the allegation method, and I think it's a pretty good method for this kind of question. So, yeah. Basically, stepping through the question really quickly, mixture A, 20% alcohol. So I'm going to just start with that as my base. I'm going to sort of treat it like, here's what I'm starting with. I'm starting with mixture A, which is 20% alcohol. And then I'm going to add mixture B to it, which is 50% alcohol. Now, what they're saying is when I mix these two liquids together, I end up with something that's 30% alcohol. And they want to know how much of each one, essentially. Well, like, specifically they asked, how much of mixture A is there? And we know that in total at the end we had 15 gallons. And so what I've done there is using this allegation method, it's quite simple. I start with what I think my starting point is. So I say mixture A is 20%. I could even write A and B at the top here, probably should have. Yeah, so A is 20%. That's what I'm starting with. I'm going to be mixing in mixture B, which is 50% alcohol. And I'm aiming for this 30% alcohol. So I'm aiming for this end mix, which is 30% alcohol. And then the allegation method essentially is write those numbers down in this way. And what you end up with is just being able to say, okay, well, 30 minus 20 equals 10. 50 minus 30 equals 20. And then you can just write that as the ratio. So, I mean, the ratio then becomes 20 to 10 of mixture A to mixture B. In other words, saying there is twice as much of mixture A as there is of mixture B. So if there were 30 gallons in total, there would be 20 gallons of A and 10 gallons of B. That's what that's saying. So 20 to 10 is the same as 2 to 1. So I didn't write that down. I just wrote 2 to 1, basically saying what I just said, double A to get, well, A is double B, I should say. And then we know from the question that there's 15 gallons in total. So if A is double B, then that splits up into 3 parts, 5, 5, 5. And we know A has to have 2 of those parts, so 10. So if A is 10 gallons, approximately how many gallons of mixture A are in the mixture? I mean, it shouldn't say approximate because it's exactly 10. So, yeah, that's that question. And one that felt easy, at least, for a change. Now, if we look at Skywalker 18's, their solution here, which is provided as kind of an example, this is how you might solve it if you wanted to use algebra. So they said, okay, let A equal the number of gallons of mixture A in 15-gallon mixture. So they're saying A is actually the number of gallons. B, the number of gallons of mixture B. So then they wrote out this whole equation, basically saying, okay, 20% A plus 50% B equals 30% A plus B. Right, okay. So what they're saying, what they're talking about there is the fact that it's 20% alcohol. So if A is how much of the entire mixture of A there is, 20% of that is alcohol. And if B is the total amount of of mixture B there is, then half of that is alcohol, and that was given to us in the question. So we know A is 20%, B is 50%, and then they're saying, okay, add those two things together, add A and B together, and what you end up with is 30% of A plus B is going to be alcohol. So really this is just referring to, and I think this minus minus one is just saying step one. So really what this is referring to is saying, well, 30% alcohol. So this is talking about alcohol content, not the total number of gallons. So solving equations 1 and 2, we get A equals 10, B equals 5. Answer D equals 10 gallons. Oh, answer D, 10 gallons. Yeah, okay. So I feel like writing out this equation, it's actually not super complicated, but they said on solving equations 1 and 2, so they didn't actually write it out. And so if they did write it out, what would they have done? They would say 0.2A plus 0.5B equals 0.3A plus B. So A plus B divided by 0.3. Yeah, A plus B equals 15. All right, so that number equals 15. So 15, 30% of 15 would be 4.5. So this side of the equation equals 4.5. 4.5 equals half of B plus 0.2 of A. And then what would be the next step from that? How do you go from 4.5 equals this to knowing A and B? All right, well, I guess we can say A equals 15 minus B and plug that in. Yeah, that's what you'd have to do. You'd have to plug it in. You'd plug in one of these. So you'd say A equals 15 minus B. So here you'd be saying 20% of, in brackets, 15 minus B plus 0.5B equals 4.5, and then you'd solve that, and you'd get an answer for B. And then you could just plug in the answer for B and get an answer for A. I think that would have taken a really long time compared to this. So, yeah. Anyway, a quicker method to solve this would be with weighted average. Okay, so weighted average is talking about, basically it's talking about what allegation does. Allegation is essentially a quick way of working out weighted average, so at least that's how I understand it. We're mixing A, which is 20% alcohol, with B, which is 50% alcohol, to get a result mix 30% alcohol, 20, 30, 50. I really don't know what this person is doing with all these like minus, minus, minus things, but anyway. 30 is 10 away from 20 and 20 away from 50. So the volumes of the mix A and B will be in inverse proportion 2 to 1. Yeah, that is a sentence form of this diagram. They're saying 30 is 10 away from 20, hence this number here, and 20 away from 50, hence this number here. So that's what they're saying there. And then essentially saying it's 2 to 1, which is exactly what this sort of X diagram told me. Writing it like that isn't as clear in my head, though. I'll say that right now. Writing it out like that doesn't make it super clear. But yeah, volume of 1 divided by volume of 2 is 50 minus 30, 30 minus 20, 2 to 1. All right, empower GMAT, who love test the answer. Or it seems like that anyway from what I've seen on YouTube. They say, just test the answer, plug in numbers and see what comes up. So we're told the two mixtures have alcohol content of 20%, 50%. We're told that mixing 15 total gallons, 30% alcohol content. We're asked how many gallons of mixture A are in the 15-gallon total. All right, so all that's just confirming the question. I'm still reading this, even though I know that this is not the method I would want to use for this kind of question. I'm still reading it in case there's some good logic in it, something that I could look at and go, okay, I can easily eliminate answers based on this logic, that kind of thing. So the alcohol content of the final mixture is 30%. 30% is closer to 20 than it is to 50. So therefore there must be more of 20% mixture than there is of the 50. So that makes total sense. And actually that would make sense to be one of the first things to notice, to say, okay, if the result is 30%, then it has to be more of 20. That would be a good observation to make. So there must be more of 20 than there is of 50. So if there's 15 gallons, more than 7.5 of those gallons will be from mixture A. Yeah, right. And so if we go back and check the answer choices again very quickly, if we have more than half being A, then that rules out A, B, and C straight away, which is actually, that would have been a good thing to do for sure. And then now we only have answers D and E left, and that's why they're saying just plug them in and see what comes up. So with two possible answers, D and E, easier one first is D, 10 gallons. So if it's 10 gallons of 20%, then you have 5 gallons of 50%. 10 times 0.2 is 2, 5 times 0.5 is 2.5. So 2 plus 2.5, 4.5, 4.5 divided by 15 equals, 9 divided by 30. That makes sense to simplify. 9 divided by 30, 3 divided by 10, 30%, which is the total. Exact match for what we were told, so this must be the answer. I mean, that's actually not a terrible way to go. So I guess if my mind didn't immediately go to this diagram and say, look, it's going to be super easy for me to figure out this ratio because I can just draw this and it'll tell me the ratio. If my mind didn't go immediately to that, then this kind of logic would actually be really helpful to sort of say, well, okay, what can I eliminate straight away because I know it has to be more of this one or that one. Yeah, so that's actually pretty handy. Yeah, and this is exactly what I would not want to do. And I'm back. So yeah, so the page doesn't look too bad, huh? Pretty good looking background there. All right, let's try. Yeah, it is a nice picture. I'm gonna try some hopefully easy sentence correction. Now let's just see. Do some verbal for a change. Frame up that whole question or no? Guess I'm gonna have to cut out the timer. All right, let's do it this way. All right, starting the timer. Let's go. Cool. All right, let's start with this. Let's say and it's not E. It's not D. C, I feel like is an option. Okay. C seems to be the best just on reading it, but I'm trying to actually rule things out based on actual rules, and that's hard. So, I mean, I'm just going to go with C and see what happens. I mean, roughly the right amount of time. Okay. So apparently C is correct. 3/4 of people got that one right. Yeah, so this one wasn't as clean as I'd hope. I mean, looking at it, I'll do it over here. Yeah, so looking at it, start with, I mean, I ruled out E and then D. I did that because when I looked at it, I thought, okay, what is this sentence saying? Basically, it's saying that planets were discovered, they're circling other stars, and most of them are either as big or bigger than Jupiter. So that's what the sentence is saying. Now, this last one, mostly as large or larger than, just, I mean, I don't really have a hard rule that I feel like that's breaking. It just sounds so terrible. In the past several years, astronomers have detected more than 80 massive planets, mostly as large. Yeah, I think that's probably going to be some kind of weird modifier rule that is being broken there, where mostly doesn't, yeah, it's not actually a proper conjunction or something like that. I'm not using the proper grammar here. I need to actually learn these grammar rules properly. But it's going to be something like that, where mostly doesn't actually connect those two clauses properly. It's kind of like saying, well, mostly, like, what's mostly? So yeah, so I feel like mostly is the reason I ruled out D and E. I feel like that's not a proper way to connect those clauses. But it could I mean, if it is, you know, who knows? But I think that's probably why. And then looking at the others were all split between how they finished. So most of them as large or larger. I don't think there's anything technically wrong with that. It's just a bit wordy. Most of them at least as large is probably a more succinct way of saying the same meaning. But again, I don't think it's technically wrong to say as large or larger. So I really think the separation is on that last part of the sentence. Most of them as large or larger than Jupiter, which circle other stars. I think that's the issue here. So which, what are those called? I think are those A positives? Is that what which is? So I'm just going to double check some theory very quickly. An A positive phrases. Just give me a definition. No, A positives are noun phrases, so it's not an A positive. I've forgotten what the word, what which and who and all that are called. And that's not helpful. Whatever, doesn't actually really matter. Point is, I'm pretty sure if you use the word which, it has to refer to the noun immediately before, which means which circle in answer choice A is referring to Jupiter, not to 80 massive planets. And so, and that's probably the same issue with encircling. Oh, no, not with encircling. But with which, I think that's the issue, is which can't jump that whole modifier in the middle, like that whole most of them is larger or larger than Jupiter. It can't jump that to then go back to 80 massive planets. It has to refer to Jupiter. And that's wrong, because it's not talking about Jupiter circling other stars, because it doesn't. Jupiter circles our sun. So that's why I think A is wrong. So that's actually a hard rule. I believe that makes that wrong. Also applies to D, but I'd already ruled that out because of mostly, which I hope is a rule that's actually wrong. Otherwise, I'm just getting that wrong. And then I'm left with B and C. And to be honest, most of them as large or larger than Jupiter and circling other stars. I don't think there's anything technically actually wrong with that sentence, or there's nothing that I know that's technically wrong with that. It's just wordy, a bit cumbersome, and a bit awkward to say and read. And I think C says exactly the same thing, but more succinctly and more clearly. So, and then circling, what do you call that? It's like when you're using the present participle. Yeah, I can't remember the names of any of the theory. It is almost 11 p.m., so I'll blame that. But yeah, most of them at least as large as Jupiter, circling other stars. Yeah, I think that's the cleanest. Well, let's see if anyone actually explains this. Why is C correct and D wrong? I think because of which, and also because of mostly. Okay, so this person's raising a interesting question. They're saying most of them at least as large as Jupiter. They're saying that's ambiguous. And what they mean by that is that it could be referring to planets, or it could be referring to astronomers. But using the same kind of property that I just sort of stepped through, when you're using a conjunction like, I hope I'm using the word conjunction correctly, but I'm going to call it that anyway. So most I'm going to say is, well, them being the pronoun, and I think most of them being kind of like the connector. This is going to be referring to the closest noun to it, the noun immediately before it, which is planets. So it can't jump back to astronomers to be talking about astronomers. They can't say, in the past several years, astronomers have detected more than 80 massive planets, most of whom love donuts or something. Like you can't then use this, like you can't like separate it with a comma and then use this clause to describe astronomers anymore, because you have to jump planets to get there, and you can't do that. So I think there's one exception where you can do that, where if you use something like this, where you say circling, right at the end of the sentence, then in that case, it doesn't refer to just the noun immediately before, it refers to the entire clause before. So in theory, if we ignored the rest, like we'll just pretend the rest of this whole sentence is here, like is all underlined. In the past several years, astronomers have detected more than 80 massive planets, mostly doing so while finishing their dinner, something like that, like something about describing how they did it. So if it was saying, yeah, mostly, like most of it, like mostly being done during dinner time or something like that, now it's not talking about planets. It's not saying 80 massive planets were doing something during dinner time. Now it's describing the entire like clause. In other words, astronomers discovering the planets mostly happened during dinner time. So, but that has to be at the end of the sentence. It can't be in the middle of a sentence like this. If it's in the middle of a sentence, it's only referring to the noun right before it. So that's my understanding, and if anyone wants to tell me that's wrong, please do. But yeah, and so to answer the poster's question, as best as I understand it, the reason this is not ambiguous is because this is in the middle of the sentence. Most of them must be referring to the closest noun, which is planets. D, mostly is an adverb which modifies the adjective large. Mostly at least as large. Yeah, so I think they were saying why is D not right? And I think they answered their own question. So mostly being an adverb, it's modifying an adjective. So that's not actually correct though, because we're not trying to modify large. We're not trying to say that 80 massive planets are like most of the way to being large. We're trying to say most of these, like these 80 massive planets, most of them are large. So, or actually large or larger than Jupiter. So mostly large, trying to say that it's like 3/4 large or something like that doesn't really make any sense. So that's a good reason why D would be wrong. So I think they kind of answered their own question actually. All right, let's see this example from GMAT. Sorry, I'm reading that out loud because off to the side here, you can't see who actually posted, but yeah. Hi, there is a difference in the meaning between the two sentences cited by you. I saw some dogs sitting outside the house. I saw some dogs that sit outside the house. In the first sentence, you're talking about those dogs who were sitting outside the house when you spotted them. However, in the second sentence, you're talking about a category of dogs, and this category of dogs sits outside the house. I actually think this is a good example of that ambiguity that the poster was talking about. I saw some dogs sitting outside the house. Are they saying, I was sitting outside the house when I saw some dogs? Or, I saw some dogs that were sitting outside the house? I think this is actually ambiguous. I think this could mean both, and that's actually a grammatical issue. So, anywho, um, do you now see how the description of the planets changes with the change in the construction from ing modifier to that clause? I mean, it's still the point. The point is still correct, I think, but I think this is a bad example. Like if it said something like I saw some dogs while sitting outside the house, then it's clear I was sitting outside the house. But anyway, most of them as large or larger, at least as large. Okay, so clearly this was from a previous version, and the original poster must have edited, because they're saying as is missing, but it's not in the actual question right now. And they're saying mostly is the problem, but they don't say why. Most of them is better than mostly. Agreed. That was what made me rule this out to begin with. Incorrect modifying phrase that starts with which incorrectly refers to Jupiter. So Fizztail, thank you very much. Confirming the same thing I had about question A. Oh, sorry, response A. Yeah. All right, well, I think that's enough reviewing that. I think, yeah, I think that kind of makes sense. Like, mostly is a problem because it's modifying the wrong thing. Which is modifying the wrong thing. So that rules out D, E, and A. We're left with B and C. And I think the way you rule out B is just to say that, yeah, it's just a weird construction to be like, the problem with B, I think, is parallelism. Like, if we say the word and, then what we want to do is have the same type of language on either side of and. It has to be parallel. It has to match up. And so most of them as large or larger than Jupiter is essentially describing the planets. So those are kind of like it's a modifier, it's like an adjective phrase or whatever the word for that would be. And then circling is a verb. So clearly the description and the action, they're not the same type of construction. So that's the problem with B, I think. It's probably the clearest mistake out of all of them, and it took me the longest to see. But I think the problem with B is basically saying, yeah, if we're saying this and this, both sides have to be the same type of language, and this is essentially an adjective, and this is a verb, so that's why that's wrong. This one I think was actually pretty easy. Oh, were you sad about losing the other viewer as well? Oh, well. They stuck around for a little while. They watched most of a question or two. So that was nice of them. Would have been nice to know who it was, though. They said hello, so that's okay. Thank you for being here for this fun stream. Just as fun as watching someone play Fortnite, I'm sure. Yeah, so this one I think was actually pretty straightforward. So I'm gonna, yeah. So I'm gonna step through this one pretty quickly. I think I was able to sort of rule out answer choices pretty quickly here. In case you haven't seen sentence correction questions before, you probably picked up on how it works from the last one. But basically, there is some portion of a sentence that's underlined. So here it's that. And the answer choices are basically options to plug in where the underline is. And what we need to do is figure out which is the best construction of the sentence. So that's what we're trying to do. And so in this sentence, basically just started by reading it, slips of the tongue do not necessarily reveal concealed beliefs or intentions, but rather are the result from the competition between various processing mechanisms in the brain. Now, first thing I always kind of try to do is say, well, what is this actually trying to say? What's the meaning that they're trying to tell me in this sentence? And I think it's relatively clear. It's basically saying if someone has like a Freudian slip, well, I guess that's actually really telling because the whole point of Freudian slip was saying that if someone accidentally says something, then that's probably some underlying belief that they were trying to hide. And now this is saying, well, that's not true, actually. Freud was wrong. So this is basically saying if someone accidentally says something, that doesn't mean that they're revealing anything that they were trying to hide. But it's actually just the competition between various processing mechanisms in the brain. So your brain is trying to do multiple things at once, and because there's some competition happening in your brain, it just picks one. And sometimes it accidentally picks the wrong thing. Truth is, I didn't really need to read the second half pretty much at all, because the point of the sentence was, the whole structure of it was, this thing is not actually this. It's what it is. Okay, this thing is not this, but rather it's this other thing. That's the sentence. So I don't really care what the other thing is, and I don't even really care what this is. I don't care about the slips of the tongue. The entire part that I care about is but rather. So I eliminated A and B straight away because I know if you say are the result, you don't say from. That's just the idiom. The way that sentence works is you have the result of something. You will never have the result from something. It will always be the result of something. So without even looking at anything else in answers A and B, I ruled them out because you can't say are the result from. You just can't do that. So ruled out A and B. C, being rather the result of. So here at least it is the result of. So that part I liked. So I looked at that and I thought, okay, well, I'll bench that for a second. And then I looked at D and E and saw that they were both result from, but they didn't have the result. So that changes things. So you can have something resulting from something else, but you can't have the result from something else. That's not how that kind of works. So that told me that looking at that, the fact that they didn't say rather the result from told me that I had to actually at least consider it. So at that point, I just saw that and I thought, okay, well, they're still in then. Let's go back to C. Being rather the result of. Being is like almost never going to be correct, I feel. So the slips of the tongue are not necessarily X. Being rather the result of blah, that's not, it's just kind of clunky. It doesn't really work. And I just don't think it's an appropriate use of the word being. So I kind of ruled that out relatively quickly as well, because I think being rather just doesn't really work. So it's between and rather and but rather. And that separation was actually kind of obvious because and rather doesn't make sense. And is now implying that we're on the same, like that they're the same in some way, and then you're immediately saying rather, which is saying is that they're not the same. But rather does exactly what we want it to do, which is to say it's not this, but. All right, actually I'll do one more. And I'll just do it quickly. Start the clock straight away. Yeah, I feel like this is going to be harder than I want it to be. The use of the barcode have is wrong, not A. And C, same problem. I guess E could be right. It just seems weird to throw the noun. All right, I think it's between B and D, and it's going to be separated based on that verb. When they were first, when the barcode was first. When they were first, it's going to be, is that pronoun accurate? Yep, it's going to be D. 2.5 minutes, a little bit long. Oh, what was the yay about? I think I missed that. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm glad you're enjoying the questions. Yeah, so I got this one. I got one right. 90% of people got it right, so that's a good sign that I didn't screw it up. It felt pretty easy. So, I mean, the first thing I kind of do, like I said, try to understand the meaning. And a quick way to kind of get to the meaning is you cut out everything that doesn't need to be there. So, the use of the barcode, that is essentially the start of this sentence. And so, and I say that because sometimes it's not, right? Sometimes you'll have a description at the start, and then the actual start of the sentence is after that description. Like, going back to earlier, while eating their dinner, comma, scientists, blah, 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 blah. Like, the actual sentence is talking about what the scientists did. The fact that they were eating dinner is just describing something about how it was when they did it. But in this case, no, the start of the sentence is here. The use of the barcode, that is what we're talking about. So use of the barcode is essentially a noun phrase, so an A positive, as I just looked up. So we're talking about the use. That is what we're talking about, the noun. Or universal product code, just describing something else it could be called. Which was created, blah, 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 blah. It's just talking about when it was created, all just descriptions. And so the sentence continues here. So the use has expanded. That's the sentence. It was originally at supermarkets. It's now into other retail. But the sentence boils down to the use has expanded. And they want to say is readily accepted, even though it had opposition early on, or it had opposition when it first started. So, the use has expanded, and now going back to that idea of parallelism, it can't be have, and that was the first thing I ruled out. So you can see I ruled out A and C because it can't be have. Because what's have referring to? Have is plural, and there's nothing for that to be referring to. It can't be referring to supermarkets. Supermarkets have not become readily accepted despite initial opposition. I think probably people liked supermarkets from the beginning, unless supermarkets put the local farmer out of business or something. I don't know, but either way, it's not talking about supermarkets. It's trying to talk about the use of the barcode. And the use of the barcode is singular. It's not a plural thing. It's a noun, one thing, the use. So the use has expanded and has become readily accepted. So yeah, A and C were out straight away. The next thing I ruled out was E. And I did that maybe for the wrong reason, but the reason I did that was, again, to do with parallelism. If we say something and something else, it kind of has to be the same structure of language. And it just seemed weird to me that on this side, we're talking about the use of barcodes, and then on this side, we're talking about barcodes themselves. It's like changing the subject. And I suppose, I don't know, can a sentence have two subjects? I don't think so, actually. I feel like that's actually a rule. I'm going to look that up very quickly. Can a sentence have two subjects? Some sentences have more than one subject. That is called a compound subject. A coordinating conjunction. I think that was the type of word I was looking for before. Oh, no, this is different than what I was thinking of. This is talking about something like Sue and David went for a run. Yeah, now there's two subjects, Sue and David, but that's not the same as what I'm talking about. Yeah, I feel like changing the subject halfway through the sentence is kind of weird. It's like, I mean, you can do it though. Like, the apple is red and the orange is orange. It's two different subjects. But it's also a parallel structure. I'm saying the apple is something, so subject, verb, adjective, and subject, verb, adjective. So that would still be parallel, and this is not parallel. So has expanded beyond supermarkets, and barcodes have become accepted. It's not parallel. So I think that's probably right. The right reason to get rid of it. Oh, another really obvious thing that's wrong with it that I didn't even get to, and actually I should have. In hindsight now, I should have read this all the way through, because it's an even more obvious reason to get rid of it. Barcodes, when it was first introduced. So barcodes, plural, have, still plural, become readily accepted despite some initial opposition when it was first introduced. When what was? When barcodes were. So not it. When they were first introduced would have to be the way that that would be structured. So that's another obvious reason that's wrong. So that's probably the actual reason why it's wrong. Changing the subject maybe wasn't the problem, but I still think that wasn't parallel as well. So I kind of think that there's maybe two problems with that one. Anyway, plural wrong, plural wrong, plural wrong. So far that's 3 out of 5 options ruled out because of getting the singular or plural wrong or incorrect. Which leaves us with B and D, which are almost identical. The only difference being they, the pronoun, and the barcode, the actual noun. And yeah, if you kind of go back and read the sentence, it sort of becomes pretty clear. Oh, sorry, there it is. It sort of becomes pretty clear which one is right, because this entire sentence is about the use of the barcode. So the use is singular, has become readily accepted despite when they were first introduced. What's they? Which plural thing are we talking about? Because nowhere in the sentence are we talking about barcodes. That's what needed to be down here when they were, because we do talk about barcodes there. So this one is right because we don't have a proper, like, we don't have a good pronoun there. So we say has become readily accepted despite some initial opposition when the barcode was first introduced. So now, yeah, that describes the time. So that's why it's D. Remove the non-essential part, same thing I did. Cut all of this out. The actual sentence is just the use has expanded. And good chat down to you. So the underlying portion has to begin with has. B and D left. Okay, well, I mean, they're ruling out E as well because of the fact that it starts with barcodes. I'm still not 100% sure that that's right, but anyway. They incorrectly refers to singular barcode. Well, actually, no, not singular barcode. Singular use. That's the singular, not barcode. Anyway, D corrects pronoun error, which is what that one was, and ambiguity by changing to barcode. D is correct. Yep. More or less the same logic I went through. In my opinion, the issue of E not only lies with barcodes again, but also with use barcodes again. It wasn't used once before that. Nowhere else does it say barcodes. Yep. So I don't know why he said again, but anyway. But also with the use of it to refer to plural barcodes that is introduced after and. No subject-verb agreement, pronoun ambiguity. Have, they, all the same reasons I ruled them out. Barcodes. Yep, all the same reasons I ruled it out, but then there should also be this one. All right, and now I am ready to get some rest. So thank you for joining me. I hope you